I'm his mother, and I demand he read for 2 hours a day.
Hey there, Mr. Redder here.
And me, the one whose head is not shaped like a balloon.
Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen demands my son reads for 2 hours a day. So I, 45 male, have a son, Callum, who's 15, with my ex-wife, Amanda. We had an amicable divorce when Callum was 2, and so far we've been co-parenting quite well. Now, I could say a lot of things about Amanda's parenting, but the long and short of it is that she and her new husband cater their parenting style to their 2 younger kids together, who are 11 and 8. Because of this, he's decreased his time at their house ever since he got the choice, and now he spends every other weekend at their house. Around a month ago, Amanda and her husband made a reading rule for the kids. The 8-year-old has to read 30 minutes a day, the 11-year-old has to read for an hour a day, and Callum has to read for 2 hours a day. I have no idea why they did this. I think it's because the 8-year-old is falling behind in his reading level, and they wanted to keep things fair between the kids. I think that this is ridiculous, as Callum is a very smart kid already, and he needs that time for homework and relaxing since he doesn't have that much free time to begin with. Amanda let me know that she expected me to enforce the reading rule when Callum is at my house too. I told her that I would not. She said that it was unfair to Callum's half-siblings that he could just leave for the house and not have to follow their rules, while they had to follow the rule no matter what. I told her tough luck. It's my house and I make the rules here, not her. Well, now Callum is thinking about not staying with her at all anymore due to the increasing strictness of her and her husband's rules. She told me that it's all my fault that he doesn't want to be around her anymore because I was so lax with the rules. I'm pretty sure I'm in the right here, but I thought it might be a good idea to get some perspective. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Requiring your kid to read 2 hours a day on top of required textbook reading and assigned English class reading seems like a good way to inspire a dislike for the hobby. Not the jerk. So how many hours a day are she and her husband reading? They should lead by example, and being full-grown adults, they probably should be reading for 4 hours a day. You know, to keep it fair. Not the jerk. This is ridiculous. 2 hours of reading on top of potentially hours of homework every day? She's damaging her relationship with him and pushing him away, and that's sad, but on her. Funny she's talking about fairness, but the 8-year-old has to read 30 minutes and the 15-year-old has to read for 2 hours, despite the 15-year-old no doubt having more homework and often more school commitments and other things drawing on their time. If it was 30 minutes as part of his homework, I could maybe understand, but making him read for 4 times more than the 8-year-old who actually needs the practice as part of homework when he doesn't is not fair. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his ex? Please let us know.
There are many ways to learn new things, and forcing yourself to sit down with some boring book that you have no interest in is not the only way to learn.
Yeah, we've read thousands of hours of Reddit stories over the past 5 years, and it hasn't made us any smarter, to be honest.
Yeah, all it's done for us is made us lose faith in humanity.
Refuse to approve an expense report for going less than 1% over? Okay then. So I was on an off-site short-term project. Coming from one of the cheapest to live countries in Europe and staying for months in Singapore, the project location, I had found some places that I could be eating for pretty cheap, and the food was good and within my taste palette. We were getting, let's say a random number, $60 per day for food expenses, but I was spending somewhere around $25 to $30 on average, with the highest ever getting to just under $50. Short project going long, drawn over 10 months by the point of this story, and our customer's client is raising a ton of issues. 70% of them are not really an issue. Discussed this a few times with some guys in my company, and a manager told me to take the client out for dinner and some drinks. He would confirm the extra expense, just be careful to not go too much overboard on the expenses. Specifically asked what that means, and he told me to try not to go over $200 to $250. We go out, and neither me nor the client really drink much, so we end up having some food and a drink each. The guys at the restaurant know me well by that point, and almost always do some rounding on the bill or bring something extra to the table on the house, and with them bringing plenty of finger food, I end up with a bill of $60.68. But yes, about 70 cents above the daily limit, way below the $200 allowance for that. End of month, I send the report in and put a special note for that day and night. Expense report goes through my company with no problems, but the customer, our company's customer, flags that receipt up as not acceptable and not to be covered. They put me in direct communication with the customer and I explained, nope, not accepted, not covered. Talk again with my company and tell them the situation and that manager advised me to do so as well as mentioned he would confirm. But unfortunately, the guy is out sick and not returning for at least 2 weeks. The customer must have this settled by the 15th of the month, and he wants to hear specifically from the manager that I was advised to act in such a way and approved by that manager for him to cover it. This is getting crazy and out of hand, so my boss, owner of the company, just covers it from his side, the full $60.68, not just the 68 cents. Customer says no receipt that goes over $60 limit will be approved. Unfortunately for me, the customer is local to Singapore and he randomly drops in at the job site. And I get to see him the day after the resolution above, and all comments were written in emails. Face to face, I tell him, you do realize that I spent an average of less than $27 a day from the allowed $60 a day. This was laughable to be denied. He probably was offended and he yells at me again the, no receipts over $60 will be covered. Well, cue malicious compliance. At all 3 places that I eat every day for the past 10 months, they agree to print $60 receipts every time I eat at their place. They even agreed to split in half the remaining value between me and a tip to the server. I had requested for the entire amounts to go to the servers as tips, as I just cared for the petty revenge, but apparently all of them felt a 100% tip every day is uncomfortable for them. Next month's expense report is sent out and the customer calls me directly, seething, and asks why every single daily receipt is at $60 from a specific date onwards. I just reply with, no receipts over $60 will be covered, so I have to fit my meals within the allowance. He called to complain to my company, but the relevant person told him that they didn't understand and to please explain what agreement was broken. He never came back as far as I know. I continued charging the max for the remaining 2 months there, netting me a cool $700 and even better service, food, and chef experiments that were otherwise only internal to the staff of the restaurants. To be honest, I had to pay and having to deal with the idiot customer even more after that, but he was a handful before it as well. I can say that the project took at least a year of my life with all the stress and nerves. Am I the jerk for checking our nanny cam footage to prove I was being lied to? Recently, my spouse, my daughter, who's 5, and I were having dinner together. He took some food off her plate to try a bite, and she responded by shaking her finger and saying, "You need to ask." He said, "I'm sorry, you're right, I should ask," and then a few minutes later reached over to my plate and took some of my food without asking. I didn't think it was a great example for our daughter, considering it happened moments earlier, so I said, "You didn't ask, you just did the same thing to daughter." He said, "I assumed you were done eating," and I said, "You assumed? But just ask me." So he handed it back to me and said, "Can I have some of your garlic bread?" And I shared. Very calm, normal exchange. Because this was a non-issue and I was not upset at the situation, we tried to use it in marriage counseling as an example of how to communicate in certain situations, mainly when I say something hurt me and my spouse wants to explain how he experienced the event instead of apologizing. It became an issue when he only wanted to give his side of the food story in counseling. Later that day, I asked him calmly again if he would like to share his side to see if it changes my perspective. I said, "I can't argue with your experience since we both agree on what happened," and to my surprise, he indicated we did not agree. He told me he took the garlic bread from my plate because he got it for both of us. I knew this was nonsense as I order from this restaurant frequently, and I know how much garlic bread comes with the dish. I got insanely angry because we argue constantly about how things happen, so I stormed off. Later, he came to me and said, "I'm sorry, I thought the garlic bread was mine, and I was wrong." So by this point, I'd been told that he got garlic bread for both of us, and then that he thought the bread was his. I felt crazy, as I usually do when these conversations happen with him, so I thought to check the nanny cam to see what really happened. He handed me my food saying, "And there's garlic bread on top for you." And then later, when I called him out for taking it from my plate, he didn't say, "This bread is mine," or "I got this to share." He said, "Okay, can I have some of your garlic bread?" I took these clips from our nanny cam and sent them to him, asking why he would lie about something so small and turn it into a massive thing. He immediately got mad and said, I can't believe you would do something as ridiculous as checking the camera. You're so out of line. And he stormed off. So Reddit, am I the jerk or out of line for using our nanny cam to call my spouse out for lying? Not the jerk, but as I'm sure you know, the issue isn't the garlic bread. Not the jerk. He's mad he got caught gaslighting you. ETA. He knows and you know this isn't an isolated incident about the garlic bread, but to save face, he needs to turn it around on you. The fact that you had to actually look at camera footage to prove he wasn't lying to you, and then he lied during your marriage counseling session? Wow, your husband sucks. Not the jerk. You aren't out of line. You thought one thing happened, he said another thing happened, so you went and verified and showed him, hey, actually, this is what happened. Instead of him going, I guess you're right, my bad, he got really angry and stormed off. A completely normal and not over-the-top reaction to being shown that you're wrong. Not serious. Everyone sucks here. You should not be getting insanely angry and storming off. Your husband has lots of other issues, including narcissistic traits and stealing food.
I know a lot of the people on Reddit jump to the divorce conclusion, but sometimes, it might be a good idea.
Punish me for being right? Good luck. Over a decade ago, I was a material handler at a manufacturing company. Pretty tedious work breaking down large batches of material into smaller manageable quantities for the workers. Gotta keep every station supplied, well organized, and order materials to meet future quotas. One day I noticed a new lot of parts are out of spec. They're too small and will damage the final product, causing it to fail testing later. This part comes in lots between 5,000 to 30,000, depending on what was ordered and passed inspection from the supplier. I put a hold on the lot of 25,000, emailed the appropriate people, followed procedure. Looking through the system, I realized we only have about 1,000 on hand, one more lot in warehouse for 7,000. This is enough for 1 week. I place another order for 30,000. We usually get 25,000. It takes 2 weeks to get, another week for cleaning and polishing. I send off another email informing of the shortage and how it will impact production. The only response I got was, "We'll look into it." After we ran out of parts, I was ordered to take the out-of-spec parts off hold. I refused. An engineer hadn't cleared them. The engineer was on vacation out of town and the other didn't know. A few days later, some random engineer from another department told me that they were good and I was forced to release the lot. I got a verbal warning for insubordination and relieved of my MH duties. Got put back on production. 2 weeks later, all the parts started failing. 2 weeks worth of about 110 people's labor, machine time, untold tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of individual parts were wasted. Chaos erupts, mandatory overtime set, and I'm just smiling. About 2 months goes by, 4th of July weekend coming up, and I got a 5-day weekend with paid time off. Managers tried to cancel, but I already had it approved in January. Almost everyone in the room was going to be working the 5th and 6th, Friday and Saturday. People were quitting left and right. Being forced to work 60 hours burned them out. Cue malicious compliance. Since we had been working these few special machines so hard on overtime, the material was running out that it used to spray on the parts. To replace it, it required a 3-day cycle, which usually happened on a Friday to Sunday, every couple of months. We were about a week ahead of schedule with the overtime. I knew it, but no one else was paying attention. I decided to take a half day on Tuesday so I could leave during the team leads meeting that I used to be a part of. On my way out, I mentioned this little problem. A couple of them ran to confirm. I grabbed a soda and left. Got a text from a coworker. They ran out of material Wednesday morning. Everyone got a 4-day weekend like they were supposed to. 10 people, including myself, quit on Monday. Moral of the story, don't mess with the people that do all of your future planning if you can't do it yourself. Am I the jerk for not helping my neighbor with the kids after her husband left her? Background info. My husband and I, late 20s, male and female, have lived next to Jack and Jill for 2 years. We have a son who's 6, and they have 2 kids who are a similar age, but a little bit older. All the kids go to the same elementary school, and I used to see Jack in the car rider line. Our neighborhood is relatively close to the school, so the school bus does not pick up here. We have to walk or drive our kids to school. Jack and Jill have constantly had loud fights ever since they moved here, and by fights, I mostly mean Jill would scream at Jack and kick him out of the house on a weekly basis. Normally, he would sleep in his car and come back inside in the morning after she leaves for work. Jill works as a CNA at a nearby hospital. the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift. Jack worked from home, like I do, which let him take the kids to school. Well, after this last fight, Jack packed up all of his stuff and left, flew back home to his mother in a different country. Jill recently came to me saying that she has no one to watch her kids from roughly 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. She asked if she could send them over in the morning, have me watch them and feed them breakfast and then take them to school, and then later pick them up and feed them dinner and watch them till she gets off work. I explained to her that being expected to be a second parent, basically to 2 kids, is not something I'm really interested in. I asked how much she was willing to pay, and she said she expected me to do it for free, since she has no friends and no one else to ask. She asked if I would watch them on the weekends so she could pick up extra shifts, otherwise she won't be able to pay the rent. I told her absolutely not, and that she's insane, basically, to think that I'd agree to something so unreasonable when we aren't even friends, and our kids aren't friends either. My husband thinks I was a jerk, and that we could offer to help, at least sometimes, for the kids' sake. My stance is that we both know she wouldn't do the same for us if the roles were reversed, since Jill isn't really a nice person. Am I the jerk for not helping my neighbor with her kids after her husband left? Nope, not the jerk. Do not budge. The husband needs to come back and step up. Tell your husband to look after the kids. Absolutely do not tell your husband any such thing. You, of course, know who will end up watching those kids. Not the jerk. This is quite an extensive and unreasonable expectation. It's not even her asking you for help. It's her expecting you to pick up her slack. 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, with breakfast and transportation. 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, with snack, dinner, and transportation. Weekends as needed. And let's not forget, it's about time for summer break. So you'd what? Have to provide full daycare while she works? She needs to come up with a plan of her own that does not involve forcing neighbors to parent her kids. Am I the jerk for refusing to share a single piece of my mom's art? My parents got married straight out of high school, had me, 25 female, right away, and then split up when I was 3. But they stayed close friends till the day my mother passed. My dad remarried Anna when I was 7. She had a daughter, Eve, who's 22. Then they had our brother Jake, who's 16, together. Jake was really sick when he was a toddler, so our parents spent a lot of time at the hospital with him, and I spent a lot of time at my mom's house. Eve's dad worked weird hours, so my mom was more than happy to take Eve too most of the time. She loved hanging out with us. My mom was a talented and passionate artist, and she was determined to foster a love of art in us. And she did for both of us, but Eve is far more talented than I am, and her and my mom bonded over their shared love of painting. My mother passed suddenly this January. I was always extremely close with her, and I was and still am completely devastated. I still can't accept that she's gone forever. I miss her so much. In late April, I finally got up the spirit to start organizing her things. Eve approached me after I mentioned that I was going to my mother's home to sort through some stuff, and she asked me if she could look through my mom's paintings and have a few as keepsakes because my mother was such an inspiration for her. I don't want to, and I refused. Not the paintings. I'm willing to give her clothes, jewelry, furniture, almost anything, but the paintings and journals are closest things I have left of my mom. There's pieces of her soul in there. It's not just stuff. They're the most personal items she left, and I don't want to let a single one go. Eve got really upset and said she didn't care about any of the other things either, and she didn't think she was asking for that much. She said my mother was an important person in her life and that they had a strong relationship. Eve believes that my mother would have left her something if she had had the opportunity to decide. I still said no, and Eve went to her mom to complain, and now my immediate family is torn on the issue and arguing when we see each other. My dad understands, but thinks I can give up 1 or 2, and that I might change my mind in a couple years once the pain isn't so fresh, and I do think that could have happened before, but Eve and Anna are pushing me so hard on it and being passive-aggressive towards me, and I feel completely different about them now. We all used to be close. I understand she wasn't a stranger to my mom, but that's just not enough to me. I think my own grief is bigger, and to ask me for such a personal thing so soon after her passing was insensitive. And I'm even more upset that they don't even see the irony of Eve sending her own living mother after me for my mom's stuff. My boyfriend wants me to just give her one and repair my family, so I stopped doing this to myself. But I think I want to stand my ground here. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. The giving of gifts is an act of generosity. If you aren't feeling it, you shouldn't give. Your choice, no matter what anyone else thinks or feels. No jerks here. I don't think this is about the paintings as much as this is about your grieving. Ask for time to grieve and process. Use that time to figure out what your mom would have wanted to do. Ask yourself if it's fair to hold on to all of the pieces of your mom or whether she'd want you to share with those that she was closest to. Not the jerk. I ended up giving away a lot of my dad's things to my brother and his friends out of guilt after he passed, and I regret it regularly. Though if you're open to it, ask Eve if she would be open to prints of the paintings you could make for her. Maybe also communicate with her, as you said in this post, that the wound is still fresh and you'll reconsider when time has passed. We were told we absolutely cannot use our work phones when not on the clock. The job I do requires tons and tons of communication, coordinating, and often lots of things are time sensitive. So often, if one of us can't get a hold of someone, we are absolutely done for. So it's been the norm for us to communicate in advance so we can plan out our day. It was never a big deal to us, as it usually just takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes to confirm everything is going as planned or be informed of any changes a few hours before we start the day. This is more to make our life and work easier for everybody. About 2 months ago, the company decided that we aren't allowed to use our work phones unless on clock. They cracked down on everyone who did it aggressively. The supervisors and managers would even call or send a text to employees when they aren't on the clock just to test us. Anyone who replied would be written up. No matter how much we complained, they refused to budge or listen at all. They get the final say. Grudgingly, we all agreed to follow the policy. No surprise, everybody decided to just stop replying to their phone as soon as their shift is over. Surprise, surprise, nearly everybody has been late pretty much every day. A lot of appointments have been missed. Tons of mistakes have been made because nobody was able to get the answers they needed. Clients start to complain like crazy. The office and managers were immediately slammed with tons of phone calls and getting very behind on everything. This week, we're all hauled into a meeting. They were asking us what they can do to help us fix this mess. We all complained about the whole thing, as it wasn't a fun time for us either. Most of us just basically told them we warned them repeatedly and they weren't having it, so they can clean this mess up. They tried to suggest a special code so we know if it's extremely urgent, but no one wants to carry their personal phone and work phone around all the time just in case. In fact, most of us told them we would just turn the phone off or put it on mute as soon as we got home. They tried to float the idea of making us all salary, which was immediately shot down, as they have a horrible history of overworking their salary workers. They tried to ask us if we're willing to go back to the old way. It didn't go well either, as there was a mixed reaction. Some were cool with the idea. Some were like, absolutely not, unless I'm getting paid for that time. And some just flat out don't want to deal with phones when they aren't on the clock at all. The meeting ended without anything being fixed. Now the CEO and HR and other upper managers have been pulling their hair out trying to figure out how to navigate this mess up. It was so glorious to watch them running into the wall repeatedly over stupid adjustments that nobody wanted. Am I the jerk for making a separate portion of stuffing for my son? I, 33 female, am married to John, who's 35 male. Together we have a daughter who's 3 and are currently expecting our second kid together. We both also have a kid from previous relationships. I have Liam, who's 8, from my previous marriage, and my husband has Ava, who's 10. I make Sunday lunch for my family every week. On Friday, Liam asked if I could make stuffing without onions this week. Liam doesn't normally eat stuffing. He tried it a few times, decided he wasn't a fan, and that was it. He tried it with his dad the weekend before. We have 50-50 custody, so our weekends vary, and he liked it. I agreed, and on Sunday made my son his own stuffing without onions. It's no big deal, after all, and I'm happy to make separate portions of anything if it means my kids eat more. This is where the problem starts. We sit at the dining table, and John points out that Liam has stuffing on his plate. Liam tells him that I made him stuffing without onions because he likes it without the onions. Immediately, I noticed Ava's mood sour, and when I pressed her, she asked why I didn't make her stuffing without onions when she'd asked about it months ago. Now, I'd understand where she was coming from if she had actually asked, but I had no clue what she was talking about. I said as much, and she told me that she'd brought it up with John, who said he had talked to me. John never spoke to me about it and told Ava that it was too much work for me to take out the onions just for her. John said he didn't tell me because he thought it would be too hard on me, wanted to make things easier, thought I'd only say no anyway. He even said that it didn't make sense to make a separate portion for just one person. He said it was stupid that I'd even done it for Liam. He said the kids should learn to either make do with onions or not have stuffing at all, because not everything in life is going to go their way. I called him an idiot. I then went to the kitchen and got the rest of the onionless stuffing for Ava to try. Later that evening, Ava went back to her mother's and told her what happened, which caused an argument between her and John, and they're not on good terms anyway. John has been angry with me since. He says it's my fault Ava and her mother are mad at him. He says I should have just left the darn stuffing alone, that I'm just spoiling my son by giving in to him like that. There's been some name calling, but I'd rather not repeat what he said. Leah must have told Mike what happened too, because he told me that he thinks John is overreacting. John's mother and the older sister think I'm a jerk, but his brother has told me to just ignore him. My parents are also on my side because they used to make separate portions for me when I was a kid if I didn't like a specific ingredient. My sister told me to post on here to see if the majority think I'm in the wrong or not. So I dread to ask, am I the jerk for making a separate portion of stuffing to suit my son's taste? OMG, not the jerk. And I can see why your husband's first marriage didn't work out. He's cruel. Your kid is 8, not 18. If it wasn't too much trouble to make him something he would prefer to eat, why wouldn't you do that for him? Sounds like your family doesn't like onions. Maybe no more onions. For real though, John's reaction to you feeding your kid is horrendous. If it were me, I'd be concerned about what nonsense he's saying to your kids when you're not around. Not the jerk. Next time, make him stuffing with crap he hates in it, and make him eat it to see how good it feels. Good on you for accommodating your son. And now you know your daughter also doesn't want onions. John needs better communication skills, especially if y'all have kids. Not the jerk. Your husband is just mad he got caught lying to his daughter about talking to you, which probably has more to do with him not wanting to deal with it than you not wanting to have extra work. Normally, I wouldn't assign an extra assumption of poor behavior, but I feel like a guilty conscience is often the cause of an overreaction like this. He knows he's being a bad communicator. You called him an idiot? We're all just gonna breeze past this and dogpile on the husband? Ah, wait, forgot this was Reddit for a hot second. Of course we are. I'm not even disagreeing with OP. He sounds like an idiot, but he's also not wrong about teaching kids that they don't get everything they want in life. The obvious problem here is the way you and your husband communicate, and if your problem resolution toolbox has "you're an idiot" sitting at the top ready to be pulled out that quickly, you need to think about how condescending and rude you're being towards him. Everyone sucks here, but also you're the jerk for that comment. How do I get my neighbor to stop texting me? I live in a garden unit, and my neighbor that lives above me is driving me nuts. She works from home, so she's constantly around and completely nosy. I like my privacy and solitude, and would like to think I'm an overall quiet tenant. I work 10 hours daily, and I don't even have a TV, so it drives me up a wall when I'm bombarded with texts about random stuff. She waits until I get home and then let out my dog to go to the bathroom, and I can hear her upstairs going from the front of her apartment to the back where I am to gossip to me and complain about her encounters for the day. She will text me back-to-back messages asking me about work or to complain about other neighbors, whether or not I even reply to her. For perspective, since Thursday, she sent me 41 messages and I only sent 3 responses. All of my responses are very short and direct. I'm not interested in having a conversation or friendship with her at all because quite frankly, she's rude and negative, but I don't want to upset her since she lives above me. I've been living here almost 2 years, her just a month or 2 longer than me, and I've never once complained about her being too loud, although I do hear her daily. There were a few times when she stopped my laundry. She has her own laundry, so she had to walk outside, downstairs, and into my shared laundry room because it was too loud, or brought my garbage back close to my door because she thought I had taken it out on the wrong day. I didn't. How can I go about setting boundaries with her, preferably in a polite way, since me ignoring her didn't seem to be clear enough? It sounds like you've tried going the polite route, but she is either too insensitive or too dense to pick up on it. I'm not saying you need to be mean, but a more direct approach may work better. Tell her to stop talking to you, and don't, for any reason, touch your stuff. Laundry too loud? That's what headphones are for. Garbage out on the wrong day? Tough. It can sit there, and you've chosen to deal with any consequences. Want to gossip with someone? There's a fabulous place for you called Reddit. Show her this post if it helps drive the point home. If she still doesn't get it, act like you don't see her. She starts talking to you, don't respond. If you're walking, just walk past her as she continues to speak to you. If you're sitting and she approaches you, whip out your phone at your earliest convenience and call someone you know that you haven't talked to in a while. or someone that you talk to all the time, or anybody else, really, as long as it isn't her. Completely refuse to acknowledge her existence. I will say that I am normally one to try and have a friendly conversation to resolve issues, but she sounds like that has been tried and didn't work. Take this advice with a grain of salt. Be prepared for retaliation, but stand firm and stay polite as long as she doesn't escalate. My ex expects me to take his kid to Disneyland. Alright, so I have a son who's 13 with my ex-husband. We got divorced because he was having an affair, and he had a kid with his affair partner. Now he's a single dad because the affair partner left. My son goes over to his house on weekends, and sometimes his kid comes over to my house because my son and him are somewhat friends, but I don't really mind. The problem now is that I'm planning on taking me and my son to Disney, and I've been saving up for this, as I believe he should go there at least once in his life to experience it, as well as him having good grades for the whole semester. I believe that my son must have told his half-brother, as my ex-husband called me and asked me what day I'm planning to leave and am I driving or him. I was confused initially, but I realized what he was talking about and told him that it was just going to be a trip for me and my son. He started to get mad and accused me of favoring my son over his half-sibling and trying to be petty for his past actions and such, and told me I should at least have offered for his son to go too. I told him no, as I wasn't going to pay for another plane ticket and other supplies, and that if his son wanted to go, he needed to pay for himself. I hung up before he could say anything else. Now my son says that his dad was disappointed about my decision and to try to change my mind so his half-sibling could have fun too, and some other remarks. My ex and a few of my friends who heard about the situation say that I'm the jerk for not letting his brother go on the trip as well, and that I'm being selfish and petty. So I'm starting to reconsider everything and just relenting. So I wanted an outside opinion. Am I the jerk? I don't care if your ex did want to pay. You are better than me for even allowing the half-sibling over at your house. You don't owe your ex anything. You don't owe the kid anything other than basic human kindness when you do happen to interact. But he is not your family just because your ex had an affair. Not the jerk. I'm sure your ex manipulated you while you were in a relationship, and he's sure trying to do it now. And if he wants his son to experience Disney, then he can take him himself. You don't owe your son's friend a plane ticket and admission ticket.
Huge shout out to our newest subscribers, Elaine, Bulltech, and Funny Little Space Case. Subscribe to our channel today and you could get a shout out in our next video.
And come watch this video next, the one that just popped up. You won't believe what happens in that one.